Hello, it's me, Arden Lee, and I am back with another video today. And today I want to talk about, gosh, how do I sum this up? I want to talk about the distractions that we prioritize ahead of getting our lives together. I want to talk about the molehills that we make into mountains in order to avoid the actual mountains in our lives. And hi, Virgil. I swear he knows whenever I'm making a video, probably because he sees me talking at the phone. I want to talk about the molehills that we make into mountains so that we can avoid having to deal with the actual mountains in our lives. I made a post on Facebook because I was inspired by just a couple of things that I saw happening around me, and a bunch of people responded to it and said that it was useful. So I figured I would make a video about that too. If you don't know who I am already, I am Arden Lee, and I am the creator of the Repatterning Project. And if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can click on the link to the free PDF guide about the repatterning modality that is in the description box below. Also in the description box is a link to a free Facebook group where you can join me and other cool, awesome people like me who are, we're all getting our lives together and hacking our beliefs in order to be happier and more successful. So I would love to see you. Reach out to me, find me, and let's do this shit, right? Which is kind of relevant to what I want to talk about today, which is this thing that I've been seeing, and I've seen it for years. I've done it myself, where, but I finally found the words for it just this past week, where I'm watching people and seeing so many shadows of my own past behavior in people now who are putting all their eggs into these really frivolous baskets that don't matter because they're easier than dealing with the big challenges in our lives. And essentially, I'll talk about myself for an example. When I was living in New York, I was really depressed, and because I was depressed and often suicidal, I really didn't think about creating a sustainable life for myself. And I also feel like this is kind of a generational thing too. I'm a millennial. I'm an older millennial, but I am a millennial. I guess I'm a zennial. Zennial with an X is the kind of that crossover that they've come up with, for people who are born right, in that 5-year span that sort of encompasses the cusps of the millennial generation and Gen X, that sort of analog childhood, digital teenagehood. That's me. So a lot of people growing up, my parents' generation, they went into jobs where they were boomers, and they just worked for 25 years and they retired, and they had, everything was set for them. It was very normal for them to be able to buy a house, etc. To have even like a single income family and still be able to be homeowners, and to have a good retirement plan. And like when I went to school, I was actually the weird one because my mom worked a part-time job, and eventually then a full-time job after my parents divorced. But I was growing up in this atmosphere where it was just like you studied and you got good grades and you went to college and that's what you did. And obviously we're living in a time now when we're finding out that all of that was a lie. I don't know if y'all feel really kind of like resentful about the fact that college was sold to us as like this big important thing that we absolutely had to do, but I sure do. Not nearly as resentful as a lot of people, I'm sure, because I'm very lucky that I got scholarships and financial aid, and I was also my tuition was helped out by my parents. I try to be pretty transparent about the amount of privilege I have. I don't have a trust fund. I don't come from a wealthy family, but the thing that my parents did for me, which is, more than a lot of people have, is they said, we will take care of your tuition. I had to get out in 3 years. I had to load up my course. So I worked hard. I studied hard. And I got, I got scholarships and I got financial aid, which was very cool. But I am transparent about that. Anyway, back to the subject. So this idea of us actually creating a sustainable life for ourselves and tackling our big problems, we actually kind of have an advantage as millennials, or as people who are living in this generation that we're living in, because we are seeing through all the lies, and we are actually seeing that our parents' generation, they may have had financial security, they may have been able to be homeowners, but oftentimes they just followed those milestones very blindly and they didn't pursue their own dreams, and they went for the milestones assuming that was going to bring happiness, and then it didn't, and they ended up getting divorced after the kids grew up, or you might have parents who have been working the same corporate job that they really don't find fulfilling, but since it provides stability they stay there, et cetera, et cetera. So in a weird way, we actually have this gift of being able to see through the lies that the typical milestones that we go through, that our parents at least were expected to go through in life. And even if you're an older person, if you're living during this time, you can see it now, you can see what's going on now, and you can see the truth for what it is, that those milestones don't guarantee happiness. That doesn't mean that you can't have that typical milestone kind of life and also be happy if that's your choice. But these boxes, these paths that we were expected to go down, it turns out that for they're not as easy as we thought they were going to be, and they're not as available to us now as they once were at a different time in history, and they also don't necessarily lead to happiness. So in the midst of this economic and political crisis time that we're in, where everything is being thrown up in the air, and we're having all of the ways that the system that we're in is not, it's the ways that the system is not designed to help us are currently being exposed. So we're kind of in this crisis of what do we do now? How do we possibly build a sustainable life for ourselves? How do we possibly, and if you're anything like me, when I was depressed, I wasn't even thinking about that, because I was I don't know how long I'm going to be alive. I just kind of kept suicide as a backup option to going completely broke, And what's funny about that is that meanwhile, I was actually making pretty decent money in my 20s for someone who was in her 20s at the time. But because I didn't know how to sustain myself, I wasn't focused on creating a life that was going to sustain myself. I didn't have the capacity, the mindfulness that I have now to be able to actually look at things critically and get my shit together. I decidedly did not have my shit together in my 20s, even though I often went very far out of my way to make it look like I did. If I'm a published author, I totally have my shit together. Or if I'm wearing these expensive shoes, I totally have my shit together. People are going to think I have my shit together. If I have this, if I have all the signifiers of this really great life or whatever, then it must be true, right? Because that's what I'm supposed to need, that's what I'm supposed to have. But I wasn't actually looking at setting up a sustainable system, and I wasn't addressing my emotional turmoil. As you guys know, if you've been watching my videos for a little while now, those times in my life where it looked like I had it all together were often some of the most painful. When my book debuted, when I had my book party on December 1st, 2011, I was 3 weeks into a breakup that had crippled me emotionally, because I was, and here I was with a book on attraction coming out. I felt like the biggest hypocrite, y'all. I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to say anything about dating and attraction when I've just lost the person that I was in love with, when they just abandoned me when I was at my lowest? I was already in the middle of a mental health episode, and they were just like, I'm sorry, but I'm not down for this. I'm not going to stick around. You're on your own. So, I wasn't dealing with my mental health. I was trying to deal with my mental health, but as you guys know, if you've also been watching my videos, I don't think that the traditional mental health, the way that we treat mental health in this society, that's broken too, right? So I was trying to do things like I was on medication. I was like, I got through my book party that night, with a Vicodin and a glass of white wine. I'm not proud of that. But it's just the reality. I'm not not ashamed of it either, because I look at that now and I'm like, well, what other coping mechanisms did I have? Fuck it, I got through the night, I did what I had to do. Obviously, I would make different choices now, because now I've figured out how to solve my emotional health. I've figured out how to feel my feelings and process them and move on. And that's the big thing that people aren't dealing with. So this is the thing that I'm talking about today. And I know this is a little there's a lot of information here because I'm covering some very big topics. But the thing that I'm seeing nowadays is that there is so much being exposed about the way that the system doesn't work for us. And there is so much dread and horror about getting our relationships to work, specifically also getting our economic situation to work for us, getting our finances in order, creating a life for ourselves at a time when, we are still advocating for the minimum wage to be raised to a rate that reflects the inflation that our country has undergone. When we are, looking at, a job market that is really, really dreadful, because so many jobs just aren't needed anymore. Amazon is delivering things with drones, and even the workers they do have in the warehouses, they're working them to exhaustion and underpaying them. We're looking at the gig economy, right? How many people nowadays are working for Uber or Lyft or Postmates or TaskRabbit, and they're working for a company that is not taking care of them, because it says, we're just going to let you do as much work as you want to. We're not responsible for the availability of the work, so just do your own thing, right? Companies are no longer taking care of their employees the way that they used to. Everyone's a consultant now, right? And it's tough, right? It basically means that you no longer have this structure that's going to provide for you. Even our Social Security is, I don't rely on that. I think it's a joke. I'm not looking anymore to any outside system to save me. But that's really the core issue, is that we don't feel like there's something to rely on. But the amount of stress and pressure for us to actually take care of our emotional health, to create relationships that are good for us, to create a life that makes us happy and that sustains us on our own, and also a life that sustains us financially, where we get to, do something that, a job that we at least don't hate, that we can trust to provide for us in some way. And of course, I'm a coach. At this point, I fall under the entrepreneur, heading. So I'm not even talking about job, but for me, for my job, it would be the confidence to know that I have value, that I can make clear offers, that I can, that I can create a career for myself, based on what I'm good at and the things that I have confidence that I know, and confidence that I'm able to teach and help people with. Can I create that for myself? So whether it's a job or whether it's a career, whether you're an entrepreneur, whatever it is, are you creating something that's going to sustain you, right? Are you looking at the big stuff? And of course, I'm not just talking about finances, although I think that's a really important stressor to emphasize here, because because of the situation that our economy is in, because of the way that that we figured out in the last decade or so that the system we were born into is a lie. That we've all been saddled with a job market that doesn't help us, and most of us, a lot of debt, especially if you were trying to do the right thing and be a smart kid and all of that stuff. So what I'm seeing people do is I'm seeing them, although of course this is by no means a recent phenomenon, this happens a lot of times, but I'm seeing people give away all their power to this petty shit that doesn't matter. is essentially the crux of what I want to talk about today. They're giving away their decision-making power to crafting the exact perfect text message back to that boy or girl so that they can, because they think if this person just likes me, then my life will be better, then I'll be happier. Or I'm going to spend my money on this expensive pair of shoes because if I'm wearing this pair of shoes, then people will respect me. People will treat me well if they think that I have a certain amount of clout or whatever. And I definitely fell into both of those former categories when I was in my 20s. After I put my book out, I had been so hurt, I'd been so traumatized that I was so, by many different situations in my life and many of my friend circles and all that stuff, I had undergone so much loss and betrayal. There was so much grief there that my real concern was just like, I don't want anybody to hurt me again, so therefore I have to, therefore I'm gonna wear the expensive shoes, because fuck you, and I'm going to, get someone even better to fall in love with me because fuck you, or whatever, I'm gonna whatever I'm gonna do, or whatever. It was so based in the perceptions of other people, or the addictions that I had, that I was feeding. I use that word. I say this almost every time I say this almost every time I use the word addiction, is that I use it loosely but also purposefully. So I'm not talking about the kind of substance addiction of of alcoholism or substance abuse for people who really have like physical detox symptoms that they need to deal with. But I am talking about getting that fix, right? Getting that fix that that I feel is going to make me feel better. Whether that was shopping or whether it was physical intimacy or relationships, I would say emotional intimacy, but I was lying to myself about what emotional intimacy was. It wasn't just, I wasn't a sex addict. It wasn't about sex, but it was about that validation or that approval or whatever. So there I was playing these games to get people's approval. Not really games like manipulative games necessarily, but I was doing the things, I was very consciously crafting and calculating my own behavior to try and get people to feel a certain way about me. I was pulling that Taylor Swift thing that she talks about in Blank Space, where it's like, find out what you want, be that girl for a month. Only I could do it for years. Like I could just keep going. I had so much fear and self-loathing isn't the right word. It's like close, but I had been so shamed for being who I was and expressing my own needs that I had this like disdain for so much of my authentic self that I created a fantasy self that I could step into, and and I transformed myself, and it was like there were parts of that were very empowering, like, oh wow, I really can be anyone that I want to be. But I was editing out so much of myself that I was losing that component of emotional intimacy. I just didn't want people to see any parts of me that were unattractive or that I felt were dorky or inconvenient or boring or whatever. Like I talk about in my book, I threw out all my sweatpants because I didn't want, I wanted to be glamorous at all times, and that's just like, there's only so much that you can sustain that without really consciously editing out who you are and what you're being and doing, and you're telling yourself unconsciously then that you're not worthy of love unless you're perfect, and that's just that's silly. That's going to create those beliefs in your life, right? When you attract when you pretend that you have no needs, you attract people who agree with you. So whether it's that, whether it's spending all your energy gaining the approval of other people, whether it's leaking out your energy financially into purchases that, are about making you feel better in the interim, that pair of expensive shoes or that dress or whatever, oh, if I just have this, if I'm just this person, like what these shoes are going to transform me into this person, and then everyone will respect me or I'll be happy or whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. Our baseline happiness very quickly drops back to the same level that it was before we had the shoes. and the shoes that seem so sparkly and alluring on the shelf, when we get home and we put them in our closet, they're just another pair of shoes in our closet, you know? And it took me years to realize that. I was like, wow, I don't feel the same about things after I own them. That's weird, right? And it turns out there's, Dan Gilbert, who does a TED Talk on happiness that I've referenced in a couple of videos, talks about impact bias, the fact that we think that things are going to change our state much more than they actually do. So that pair of shoes that we're like, oh my gosh, if I'm just wearing that pair of shoes, that boy will definitely fall in love with me because I'm gonna look so fabulous or whatever. And we fall in love with that feeling and we purchase that feeling, and then it kind of just goes away, and it's like, no, that person wasn't actually gonna love me because of my shoes, like, that's silly. But it took me a long time to make those thought processes conscious, and in that time I leaked out a lot of my power, and I leaked out a lot of my energy into other people's approval. I was told by someone who is a leader in the spiritual community, that it was about like 85 to 90% of my energy was going toward other people's perceptions of me. And the person told me that at a time when I was just seeing that for myself, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh. So around that time, I stopped spending money on stupid shit, and I started putting it more into my band. When I started out my band, I was working with a producer who was willing to work with me for free because he saw potential in me, but as a result, he also called a lot of the creative shots, because again, if he's doing it for free, then I'm paying to like have a say in things, and I pay for the quality of things, so I paid to make those creative decisions and have something that I'm really happy with. So my first album is something that I created because I just wanted to have a band, and yeah, I was learning, I was figuring out my sea legs, but it was like, I want people to like me, I want to have a band, and I want to, and I was trying to copy off of, what I wanted to sound like based on other bands that I admired at the time. I was like, I want it to sound like this, I want it to sound like that. I still, I'll still reference things or whatever, but it's amazing to me looking back at that time how much money I was willing to spend on boys, like literally taking guys shopping. If I had, an influx of money that was really good, I'd be like, hey, let's go for a shopping day together. And I just, or I'd like spend on, I'd spend on expensive dinners or whatever, because it made me feel better, because I was depressed, right? I wasn't managing my emotional health, so I needed these things to feed me, to like kick up my state. So, and sometimes, oftentimes that was in spoiling other people, because I had been in a relationship in my early through mid 20s where I was given positive reinforcement every time I spoiled the person that I was with, materially, and sometimes that was almost like the only thing that I could do to earn their love and affection and attention, right? This is another way that like things that we do under the guise of BDSM and dominance and submission can come back and bite us in the ass, and actually be really unhealthy. So I had continued taking on that programming. So when I needed validation, oftentimes I would just spoil the shit out of people, It also looked weird to normal people who were trying to date me that I was just like, that I was going so overboard or whatever. But I had this idea that being this grandiose Casanova figure was, that was like constantly providing stimulation and excitement, was what I needed to be in order to earn love. And I don't regret like those emotional journeys or whatever, but I look back at that and I'm like, what if I had taken all of the energy and the bandwidth that I had spent on these people who ended up kind of ditching me anyway, who I no longer even have contact with in my life, and what if I had put that into my music then? What if I had started what if I had started taking myself seriously as an artist the minute I created my band, instead of really waiting until my third album to do so? So if you guys, I don't know if you know, but if you've looked on the rest of my channel back through my videos, I have a couple of videos of my band. I've created a band called Arden and the Wolves, and it was only on the release of my third EP, Who Can You Trust, which came out in February of this year, 2018, that I really started saying like, okay, no, I want to really, I'm really gonna try and go for this. I'm gonna stop saying, I'm gonna stop calling my band a vanity project, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the change that I made, is I finally said, I'm gonna actually put my investment, my energy of investment, both time and money, and thought, and energy and focus into the things that actually mean something to me, like my band. And then I was like, all right, now I'm gonna now I'm gonna focus on something that is actually gonna create a life that I love, and that's why I hired Adam Lyons, my business coach, to help me take my work that I really love doing, working with people to analyze and hack their beliefs and their thoughts in order to get better results, which is what we're talking about now, because I did it myself and I've seen the improvements. I'm gonna invest, in taking that to the next level. But I could only do that once I decided that I had the will to live, to actually not keep thinking that suicide was just like my backup plan if I went broke, And in order to do that, I also had to, before that, I had to solve my trauma. I had to figure out how to have the will to live, I had to decide that I wasn't going to be in pain and suffering anymore, that this was no longer acceptable. And, I started work with a coach. It actually kind of happened like in a weird way, kind of happenstance. I set the intention to heal. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I just knew in leaving my, the prior relationship I was in, right before I set that intention to heal, I knew that I wanted things to be different. I didn't want to go through a situation like that ever again, and that clearly there was something in me that needed to change. So I set the intention, and then, several months later, a bunch of stuff started happening that started showing me everything, because that happens when you set an intention in the universe. You will get pretty clear guidance almost immediately. And then from there, I started working with a coach, and I was just like, I was like, I think I just need to, a couple sessions to undo the shame of my last relationship. And then we opened the doors on that, and it was like, she described it as like all of my trauma fell out like boxes that I'd stuffed into a closet, and that was absolutely true. So it was like, oh, holy shit, I actually had a whole bunch of stuff that actually needed clearing. And we worked for a while, and I worked, as a very active participant in that, examining all of my beliefs and examining all the things and all the choices and all the traumas and the experiences that led me to be making choices in this manner. And I undid them, and I repatterned them all, I reprogrammed them, and now that's what I teach essentially. But in order to do that, I had to start actually prioritizing my own emotional health. I had to start prioritizing my finances in ways that were, in ways that required me really breaking free of that, kind of broke millennial mindset, of like, screw the world, let's party, because I don't know what my future is. I was like, well, if I don't know what my future is, it's going to be actually kind of on me to build a future. And I also had to look at investing in the things that were actually really going to make me happy, like having music that I can be really, really proud of, having my band be something that serves me, a vehicle that serves me and my happiness, and doesn't just make me look cool to my musician friends, which is like admittedly the reason I started my band back in New York. I joke all the time. I'm like, people are like, what made you start a band? And I was like, well, I was dating a lot of musicians at the time, and I didn't want to be thought of as a groupie. You can't be a groupie if you have your own band, ha ha ha, and I said that, and it was partly a joke, but it was true looking back at it. And now I'm creating things that are for me, and I'm not, the molehills are like the shoes and the material objects and the You know, like I remember, you know, when I was dating my ex, if I, you know, I scraped my car on a parking column or whatever, and I remember being ashamed, being like, oh my gosh, like I don't want my partner to see that I have this scraped car, because he was someone who was a lot wealthier than I was, and I felt this like shame around it, like I'm not on your level if I'm driving this car that I've just like scraped up. I felt shame about, like, you know, moving to LA from New York and having to get used to parking next to parking columns or what have you. And now I'm just like, I don't care. The people who love me don't care what kind of car I'm driving. That's silly. Why was I so worried? Why was I so, why did I care about that? Why did I care about the ways that people were perceiving me? You know, I drove around for like almost a whole year with a scrape on the side of my car this last time, because I was like, my music is more important. You know, if it's just cosmetic damage, then you know, whatever. I'll fix it when I have the spare money, but I'm not going to put off the things that are actually affecting me and the things that are actually making me happy. So the people who love you don't care if you're wearing expensive shoes. The people who love you don't care if you're driving a fucked up car. They don't expect you to craft your text message exactly perfectly. And, you know, that boy or girl saying yes to going out with you is not going to change your life, because if they're right for you, they'll be doing it anyway, and they'll also want you to be pursuing your own dreams and pursuing your own emotional health and your happiness. So this video went way longer than I anticipated, but it is a pretty big concept to unpack. So anyway, stop putting your energy into those tiny little petty things that don't matter. Stop buying things to just make yourself feel better in the moment. Or at least, like, if you have your coping mechanisms, I'm not saying like don't buy shit, you know, obviously, you know, we need things to survive, and there are things that make us feel better, and that's great. But if you're putting those things above solving your life, then you're putting them there because you're distracting yourself from actually solving your life. So, you know, at least if you're going to have a coping mechanism, have it be one that actually goes along with you solving your life, you know, one that is in support of that, one that is not like leaking all of your energy. If I need a pick-me-up nowadays, I go to Ross and I buy candles. I have so many candles. I know I'll use them all. It's like, oh gosh, I must have like over 30 candles in my apartment right now, but I always have a candle burning because I'm super into it. So it's like, if I want to splurge right now, it's like I'll go and I'll spend like $30 buying like 6 candles at Ross or whatever. And so I go on, you know, I do things that are actually, you know, okay, I can spend, like, I have a budget for a $30 shopping spree or whatever, right? But I look back at like being in my 20s and sometimes buying like a $1,000 dress that I've worn maybe like 5 times in my life that didn't make anyone love me. And I look at that $1,000 and I'm like, damn, that's like, if I had that $1,000 today, that's halfway to a song, you know. That's almost a song and a half, you know. So, or not a song and a half, it's almost 2/3 of a song, depending on how many tracks I have in it. So just I really encourage you to be mindful of your resources, and by resources I mean your focus, your energy, your money, your time. You know, our lives are a series of choices, and the more that we make those choices consciously, the better off we're going to be. And the more we're going to think about actually setting ourselves up for success and for a future that is sustainable. If I took all that money that I had spent on shoes and lingerie and put it into an IRA, I would probably be in a different financial position right now. I'm not in an awful financial position, I just don't have an IRA, and it would be cool if I did. So, you know, like, because again, I was so upset and so emotionally unhealthy that I wasn't thinking about my future because I was just in survival mode and I was just trying to get by. So solving your emotional health, then solving your financial health, and solving your creative health, solving you know, solving your purpose, your life purpose, all that big stuff, right? Whatever order you feel called to do it in, I think probably emotional health comes first. The way I did it was emotional health, then creative health, then financial health. Yeah, financial and purpose kind of going in the same way. And yeah. So do that, please. It's really entertaining me to see a lot of people around me who are coping with these times by getting new hair extensions, or buying things, or freaking out over the fact that a boy they like hasn't texted them back, or that the chemistry with someone is not, if it's not there, it's not there, it's whatever, it's fine, it'll work itself out. But are you taking care of you? Are you taking care of your life? Are you setting yourself up for a future of success? If you think I'm talking about you, I'm probably talking about you, but there's a whole bunch of people I'm talking about, so it's not just you. It's a lot that I'm seeing lately. It's an understandable reaction to the economic stress, the political stress, and quite frankly, the PTSD, the mass PTSD that we are living in this time. I understand that, and I get it, but I wish I could go back and save myself that time and energy and effort. I wish that, when I was a pro dom and I had guys who were willing to spend a ton of money on me just for, bossing them around or whatever, I wish I had taken that money and invested it in my future instead of, spoiling a partner who was abusing me. Like, spent $2,000 on a dude's birthday and then, had to bail him out of jail a couple months later. So don't make my mistakes. I made them so you don't have to. Set yourself up for success. Invest in your dreams. You are worth it. Anyone who thinks otherwise and wants, all of that energy from you for their own purposes is using you. The people who love you want you to succeed. And they want you to be emotionally healthy. And they want you to take care of yourself. They do not want you to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. So don't do that. Call your power back. Call your energy back. And here we are in this time of mass upheaval, so that we can learn the truth behind that lie of the system that we were brought up with, and we can actually do something that is going to, we can actually create something that's going to sustain us. And again, that's finding that thing that is that purpose for you, and that thing that other people need and are willing to, invest in, and finding that cross purpose is right there, and investing in whatever it takes to build yourself that life where you get to do that. So do that. Don't spend money on stupid people who don't love you and don't support you, or money on things that you're getting to try and make them love you, support you, or respect you, because it doesn't work that way. Sounds like it does, but it doesn't. Sometimes you have to spell it out. So anyway, love you. I'll see you in the next video. Believe in yourself.